Good morning. This is the public hearing of June 20th, 2017. Chair Srinivasan.
Here.
Commissioner Bland.
Here.
Commissioner Chapin.
Here.
Commissioner Chen.
Here.
Commissioner Devonshire. Commissioner Goldblum. Commissioner Gustafson.
Here.
Commissioner Lutfi. Here. Commissioner Shamir Barron.
Here.
Commissioner Voss.
Here.
Commissioners, good morning. The first item on the agenda is an application for a certificate of appropriateness of the Borough of Brooklyn, docket number 1908998. This is 2 Pierrepont Street, located within the Brooklyn Heights Historic District. It's an apartment house designed by Jerome Zarinsky and built in 1948. The application is to construct a barrier-free access ramp.
Good morning, Commissioners. Catherine Redd, Preservation Department staff. The proposal before you is to install a barrier-free access ramp in a front planted areaway at this building at 2 Pierrepont Street, which is at the corner of Pierrepont Place. This is the west facade. This is the Pierrepont Street facade. The areaway is down here in front. This is a designation era photo. Here's the location of the building. The areaway is here. And this is a montage of the render of the existing and proposed views. And to take you through the presentation is Thomas Bayo.
Good morning. I'm Thomas Bayo. I'm the architect for the project. Our intent, Catherine, how do you help me?
It's right there. The top arrow to the right and left.
That's the pointer. Okay, thank you. The left rendering is the existing planter. The right rendering indicates our method for installing a handicap ramp to access the property. These other photos are simply just informational. The area of our issue is getting into a lower level entrance. We're approximately 16 inches below the street level. Sorry, here. And our intent is to access this lower area through here by cutting into the planter. Our intent is to maintain the exterior brickwork on the planter and construct the handicap ramp from this side along Pierrepont Street to Pierrepont Place to this entranceway right here to the building. It is the least cumbersome way of entering and providing ADA access to the building. In so doing, we'll also correct and restore some of the brick pointing. We're going to maintain the quality of the mortar and brick, and we intend to maintain the black ornamental iron planter screening. Existing, again, and proposed. And you can see the ramp in here. Again, existing right here and proposed. These views are flat elevation views. Above is from the street. The second one below here is a cross section. As you can see, we're mounting the handrail on the inside of the brick, and our intent is to maintain the ornamental iron rail. We have a vault. We have a partial vault we discovered under the sidewalk, and these details refer to how we will use a grade beam to span over the vault at the sidewalk level. And of course, our finishing for the rail, the handrail mounted in the handicap ramp, as we've generated with staff, will be painted black. Because the building is a 47, most of the ironwork is black, so 1948. Most of the ironwork on the building is black, so we feel that this would be an appropriate solution for the handrail rather than keeping it as stainless steel. I'm going to go back and point out again, there's the black windows. There is stainless steel handrails that enter the building. These are going to be maintained, cleaned up, but our intent is not to match them. It's to match the black iron. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? All right. Are there any speakers on this item? No speakers. Community Board 2 recommends approval of this application, and the Historic District Council also commends the architect on a thoughtful way of preserving historic fabric and restoring the entryway of this building. So if you have no other questions, we can close the hearing. Comments? It's, I think, very well designed and sort of the right location to put a ramp, and it's within existing planter bed. Yes, Fred.
I feel compelled to speak simply because I live only a few doors up the street and walk by this every single morning, including this morning, as I'm bemoaning the sad state of affairs of what used to be a nice little garden there. And when I first thought that this was going to take the whole garden, it sort of saddened me, but I think this is a terrific solution. Luckily for the distances and so forth, it can all happen in one ramp rather than a switchback, which I thought was maybe going to be the deal. But so it allows a semblance of the former garden to be returned just with the ramp in the middle. So it's a very good solution.
Okay, great. Fred, do you want to read that into the
I
record?
can keep going, right. In the matter of 2 Pierrepont Street, Brooklyn Heights Historic District, this is an application to construct a barrier-free access ramp. I recommend approval, finding that the new ramp to be located within a planted front areaway that extends along the primary Pierrepont Street facade between Pierrepont Place and the west and the sunken entry landing to the east will be partially obscured by the existing areaway walls, that only portions of the historic plain, buff, brick, and concrete walls at the western and eastern ends of the areaway, perpendicular to the primary facade, will be removed in order to accommodate a new ramp, and the historic areaway wall parallel to the primary Pierrepont facade will not be altered, that the new buff brick retaining walls within the altered areaway and adjacent to the new ramp will match the surrounding areaway walls in terms of materials and design, that the metal railings at the new ramp will be simple in design and finished in black paint and therefore will not call undue attention to themselves, that the untinted concrete paving at the new ramp will be harmonious with the adjacent concrete sidewalk paving at this site and in keeping with paving found traditionally at areaways and walkways at buildings of this age and style, that the work will allow for barrier-free access to the building in the least obtrusive manner possible, and that the work will not detract from the special architectural character of the building, streetscape, or district.
All in favor? Any opposed? The application's approved.
Thank you very much.
Commissioners, the second item is an application for certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, docket number 19-09763. This is 835 Carroll Street, located within the Park Slope Historic District. It's a neo-Renaissance style row house designed by William Flanagan and built in 1896. The application is to construct rooftop and rear yard additions.
Good morning, Commissioners. Caroline Passion, Preservation Staff. The subject property is located on the north side of the street, mid-block between 8th Avenue and Prospect Park West. Here's a historic photograph of the building and the existing conditions as it is today. The applicant is proposing to perform restorative work at the front facade and address their facade and window violations at staff level. But for your review, the applicant is proposing to construct a one-story rooftop addition, seen here, which will be set back from the front and rear facades, and to construct a two-story stepped addition here at the rear. Although the rear addition will not be visible from the street, the staff performed a site visit of the mock-up, and it will be slightly visible to the west of the property here, as you see here. And as you continue to go west, you don't see it in the presentation, but you will see more of it. And I'll just submit some photos to illustrate that. And here's the mock-up here, so that's what you'll be looking in the photographs that'll be passed around. And the architect, Riyad Ghanam of RG Architecture, is here to discuss this proposal and the visibility sightlines in more detail.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for your time. My name's Riyad Ghanam. I'm the architect for the project. As mentioned, we're in Park Slope, and the building is an 1896 building, and restorative work is ongoing to the facade. Again, there were windows that were replaced at some time earlier that we are mitigating that problem with the project. They were aluminum windows that we're replacing with wood windows in kind to the original design. There'll be restorative work on the facade, including the parge coat of plaster. There's cleaning that needs to be done. The cornice element needs to be repainted and repaired in certain areas, and the brownstone at grade level also needs to be cleaned and repaired in places. This is a brief summary of some of the work that I just mentioned that's going to be happening. I didn't mention also replacing the brick mold in kind, but the wood windows are an ongoing repair. We're in a block with, we have 3 buildings that are in our fashion. You can see the one next to us. The stoop was removed. Ours is largely still in its original condition. And I think that the most important part of what we're doing today is the vertical addition that we want to propose. So here's a kind of a block pattern that you can see. Most of the buildings already have a horizontal extension on the lower first 2 stories. Most of them also have outdoor space associated with those horizontal additions. This is a view from the rear of the building. And this is our zoning diagram. This is the area, I think, of main interest with regard to the preservation criteria. So we are set back about 17 feet from the front of the building on Carroll Street, and we're set back about 15 feet from the rear of the building. The addition is about 10 foot 6 tall, and here's a diagram that indicates the scope of work. Basically, the gray area here, this is the existing on the right, and on the left we have the yellow area, of course, is the proposed new work. Here's a building section that indicates again how the massing plays out well within our zoning envelope and set back to avoid the sight lines. So this is just an extension of the sight line. I have another section that shows the complete extent of this from the neighboring property line. But basically, sight line standing directly across the street is our addition is obscured by the cornice and the existing condition in general. As Carolyn mentioned, as you go towards 8th Avenue, the addition does appear. So these are side-by-side comparisons, the left being the existing, the right being the proposed addition. You can see here we have the first horizontal addition, which is about a 7-foot extension from the existing, and then another 3-foot extension. So it's a stepping of the building as it goes up. Here's a site plan indicating the same information, just in plan view. Here you can see the front setback and the rear setback and the 2 horizontal projections below. Just walking through the plans, we're doing work on the cellar. There's a basement level, first floor. All of this is interior work. We're basically maintaining the existing stairs, and most of the on the lower levels where existing casework and other existing appurtenances still remain. Those are being maintained. And then here you see the first level where we have on the proposed second floor, you can see part of the horizontal extension. And then as we go up, the smaller extension. Finally, the top unit. each extension creates outdoor space for each unit. And then here is our rooftop penthouse. We do include a small area of roof deck. There's one unit that doesn't have private open space directly associated with this unit, so it was our proposal to equalize all of them and give that one unit common open space. These are the elevations of the building. So again, largely just a restoration to the existing conditions with our rooftop addition. We're using a standing seam metal and a panelized system to create the facade. It's our contention that we want to separate the new addition from we want to make a clear distinction between what's new and what's existing. Here's the rear. On the rear, you can see we're maintaining the patterning of the windows that exist. We're replacing basically using the same type of windows on the new horizontal extensions. The other new addition will be the guardrails that are required by code, of course. And then our top floor addition, again, standing seam metal and aluminum windows. Here's a materials palette to give you a better sense of the type of materiality that we're proposing. So metal rails. Here is the standing seam. The lower level windows are all wood frame windows. This is an enlarged section, and this is showing the sight line. This sight line is taken from a point at the property line across the complete width of Carroll Street. And so again, you can see from a user perspective, when you're standing at the building, the vertical addition is not visible. Here are some existing photos with the key. So here we are looking from Prospect Park. Let's see, this one is from Prospect Park looking down Carroll Street. And then we approach getting a little bit closer.
Can you just go back to the previous picture for a second? Previous slide. Can you show us where the rear addition is on this section?
Certainly. So the white areas are the horizontal additions.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
This portion is existing.
Thanks.
And moving on, so here you can see our rooftop addition. These views, maybe not so clear. The trees, of course, certainly obscure some of the view, but from the park, you can't see anything. Pretty much everything from the park up to our building, the addition is not visible. As you go towards 8th Avenue, the addition starts to appear. Our neighboring building is a little bit lower than ours. And I think some of the photos that you have indicate that. As you look at our building, you do see there are some taller buildings along Prospect Park, which when you're looking from the direction where you can see our addition.
Can you point them out, because you're talking about taller buildings? I don't know which ones you're talking about.
This I think is a 13-story building.
Okay.
Where I have the pointer. Let's see. I actually have it marked out on our block plan. So let me just go back. Let's see.
Okay.
Oh, 17 stories. My mistake. This is a 17-story building. So when you're looking from the perspective where you can start to see our addition, you can, part of it is in the background, you would be seeing a taller building.
The pictures that you handed out, can you show us on this where the points of view are?
Yes.
Yeah, these are photographs. I think, Caroline, you took these photos, right?
Yes.
Okay.
When I did the site visit for the mock-up, you would be seeing this front facade, and you can see the taller building. It's like the taller building.
Where's that taken from?
So here's the property here.
Yeah.
Basically standing across the street, probably like from this vantage point. So you're looking this way, the way when this photo is taken.
And that's the one with the maximum visibility, the one where you really see them.
That is max. So as you start to walk to the west, towards 8th Avenue, it's really difficult to see because of the trees and the leaves. But as this is really the maximum point of visibility, this kind of stretch right here.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I just have a quick question. There are two flues, right, chimneys that you have, I think, within your building. Do they have to be addressed? Do they need to be raised or anything as a result of the proposed enlargement at the rooftop?
What we're trying to do is not have to raise them because we're doing our environmental exhaust through those chimneys. So the rear one we're going to reallocate to environmental exhaust, meaning bathroom fans, non-products of combustion, and therefore they only need to be 30 inches above the roof.
30 inches above the proposed roof, is that right?
Right.
So does your mock-up include the increase in the
No.
height of the chimneys?
I'm sorry, no, because they're behind.
Okay, so that one's, what about the one in front?
This one we weren't proposing to extend.
Because you don't need to, or because,
Well, the project sponsor's here, and I don't think that we're going to be activating those chimneys.
okay, so that chimney is not actually going to function?
That's right.
Okay. All right, thanks for clarifying that. All right, are there other questions? Right, are there any speakers on this item? Yes, please come forward.
My name is Bruce Lovett, and I happen to live on this block of Carroll Street. I was wondering if the architect could tell me how many cubic feet are being added at the penthouse level, and what the cubic foot of the additional extension on the, I guess it would be the third and fourth floors would be.
When you say cubic feet, do you mean square feet or cubic feet?
I meant cubic feet.
Okay. All right, thank you. Are there other speakers on this item? Any other speakers? Community Board 6 recommend denial of this application, and they note that the project's out of context with the historic district, especially the rooftop addition, which is clearly visible from the street. So the issues about visibility, and then we also received a few emails from people within the neighborhood expressing concerns about the size of the addition. All right. Do we have any additional questions for the applicant? Yes, we have a speaker? Please come forward. Yes, you'll be given 3 minutes.
I'm Harris Flynn. I live on President Street, directly in back of this project. First of all, it's important to note that there's an existing non-conforming extension that leaves only 11 feet of rear yard between my property and the back facade of the extension. I'm quite concerned about the proximity of that. As I say, it's existing, but I understand there's a plan to use the roof of it, which would mean an extension of the non-conforming use. I'm also very concerned about the balconies, in that they will, on an already one of the largest houses on the block, it will make it even bigger and close down the garden area. I think those are my main concerns, especially the use of the roof, in that it will be only 11 feet from the property line that separates our two properties.
Okay, thank you. You have a question, John? Yes. Can you answer the question of cubic feet? It's an odd element, but okay.
I'm sorry, but I don't have that information. I have the dimensions on our presentation.
What's the square footage that you're adding?
The penthouse is only allowed to be 20% of the roof area. I'd have to scroll through my drawings to recall exactly. I think that information might be on my drawings. But it's, we can kind of do the math. It's 17 feet is the depth of the projection, essentially, and then the width is the lot width, which is about 21 feet, 3 inches. So. So it's about 360 square feet on the rooftop. As for the horizontal projections, there's a 7 at the second floor, 7 foot by 21 feet. And then at the third floor, it's about 3 feet by 21 feet. And those are all within our allowable envelope.
It's a quick question.
Yes, Adi.
Use is not our purview, but I'm just curious, is this being turned into a multi-unit residence?
That's correct.
It is.
Or it is a multi-unit residence.
Oh, it exists as a
And it's
multi-unit.
existing multi-unit, and we're maintaining multi-unit.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? In that case, we can close the hearing. All right, comments? Well, oh,
I think
Go ahead.
I think I'm most concerned with the visibility from the front. And I think it probably is only minor tweaks and working with the staff to figure out how they can either, squeeze off the edge or squeeze it back just a little bit, just to get it out of the visibility. Because when you see it, 4 months out of the year, those trees are not going to be there, and it's going to be very visible. At least from particularly when you look at that picture where it's visible even during the spring, I guess that is.
right. Yes, Fred?
I think the drawings show a 9.5-foot ceiling, floor to ceiling height for the addition on the roof, which it doesn't need to be that high. I think it could be 8 feet easily for that little space, and that would lower it by 1.5 feet, which I think would be a significant improvement. And for me, the rest of it is relatively modest, and we see this sort of thing a lot. So this is a modest change.
And then there's some of the other testimony. Those are issues that are not issues that we would consider, right?
Oh, right, you mean like the use of the terrace?
Right.
And
So
Right,
that's not
really-
before us.
That's not before us. Yes, Diana?
Yeah, I just agree with the comments about visibility, because it looks like there's maybe one other penthouse in this entire block. So since if it's the first or second one, maybe the first one we're actually seeing, I think it's important that it not have visibility, although it's modest.
Right. No, I agree. I think they should work with staff to just remove visibility. And it seems that there are a couple of ways they can do that. One is, as Commissioner Bland suggested, to lower the floor-to-ceiling height within the penthouse. And clearly they have space at the rooftop to set it back as well. So I think they could set it back significantly to remove any visibility, because I agree, if you look at the plot plan, and at least from the photographs, it seems that you may have a tall building behind, but along the row, you really don't have any rooftop addition that's visible. So I think you want to maintain that Horns line, and even though I recognize some are 4 stories and some are 3 stories, and I think the other thing is I would just want them to continue to work with staff on the issue of the chimneys. If their intent is not to use the chimney that's in the front of the building, perhaps they could clearly demarcate that so that they don't have to increase the height, and just also vet with our staff whether and just to make sure that the chimney at the back is either going to remain at whatever, I think 30 inches above the top of that with the mechanical ventilation, that it makes sure that's not visible as well. Okay, Jeannie, would you like to read that?
In the matter of docket 19-09763, 835 Carroll Street. Oh, thank you. A neo-Renaissance style row house designed by William Flanagan and built in 1896. The application is to construct rooftop and rear yard additions. I note that the building's style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Park Slope Historic District. I recommend approval with modifications, finding that the proposed work will not eliminate any significant architectural or historic features, that the proposed one-story rooftop addition will be set back from the primary and rear facades, thereby maintaining the original volume of the building, that the gray metal finish and simple detailing of the addition will help it to remain a discrete secondary presence when viewed from public thoroughfares, that the proposed rear yard addition will not be visible from a public thoroughfare, that the proposed rear yard addition will be constructed on the existing rear L at the second and third floors and will preserve the existing historic patterns of Ls within this row of houses, that the proposed addition will not rise to the full height of the building, thereby preserving the historic plane of the upper floors of the historic row, that the proposed addition will not project further than other existing rear additions within the block and thus will not diminish the central green space, that the cumulative effect of the added volume of the roof addition combined with the proposed rear addition will not overwhelm the building or the row, and that the proposed work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the building and the Park Slope Historic District. However, I find that although the rooftop addition will not be visible from directly across the street, the addition will be visible in prominent views from the west along Carroll Street, and that the chimneys may need to be raised per code and have not been mocked up. Therefore, I recommend that the height of the addition be reduced, set back, and otherwise restudied to reduce visibility from the west, and that the applicant work with staff to ensure that if the chimneys are required to be raised, they are configured in a way that will not call undue attention to the installation.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This application's approved.
Commissioners, the third item on the agenda is an application for a certificate for a binding report in the Borough of Brooklyn. It's docket number 19-11486. This is 200 Eastern Parkway, Brooklyn Institute of Arts and Sciences, the Brooklyn Museum of Art, an individual landmark. This is an eclectic Roman-style museum building designed by McKim, Mead, and White and built in 1894 to 1924 and altered in 1936 with later alterations and additions. The application is to alter the rear facade.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ik ben Stork, landmarks preservationist, and I present you an application for 200 Eastern Parkway, also known as the Brooklyn Museum. And it's located in the northeast of Prospect Park at the corner of Washington Avenue. The proposal is to alter the facade of the existing south addition of the museum. Which was constructed and approved by the Commission in the 1970s and subsequently altered in the 1980s. By removing a portion of the existing concrete panels and replacing them with new windows and metal panel infill. Angel Añón, the architect of the project, will present this application further to you.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Angel Añón. I'm the principal of Añón Studio Architecture and Preservation. Our firm has been retained by the Brooklyn Museum for this project, and we are delighted to present it to you today. Here with me today is Kenan Kurtz from the Brooklyn Museum, who's the project, building architect for the facility. We're here to talk about the Brooklyn Museum on Eastern Parkway, an individually designated landmark from that was designated in 1967. The building, as we know, is the result of a winning competition from McCain Mid and White. Here, on the left-hand side, you have the winning master plan proposal by McCain Mid and White, and on the right-hand side, you see the model of what that winning proposal was. Here's the front facade of the building with the main entrance on Eastern Parkway, and here's the side facade that was proposed for that facility. Those were the grand plans. This is actually the reality. The building was only partially built according to the original McKean Mid and White plan, and the designation report for the building acknowledges that this is the main character-defining feature of this property, the original McKean Mid and White design buildings. This is an image from the 1915s, and here's an aerial view that really shows that only the front facade and the first of these quadrants on the southwest, on the northeast, is the one that got built as part of the original construction. So if we look back at that original master plan by McKean Mid and White, we could tell that only a portion of the original plan was built at the very beginning, and this is now a site plan of what the existing complex is today. In red, you see the outline of the original master plan, and in different colors, you see some of the different additions and how the building has evolved over the years. In blue, again, the original McKean Mid and White construction. In orange, on section H and along this area, you see an addition, an extension, and an addition that were added after the building was designated as a landmark. And in yellow, you have a more recent extension that was approved and built in 2010. So what we're dealing with is really a complex that is primarily led by the original McKean Mid and White building, with a series of additions and extensions that have taken place over the years as the building expands. Oh, and I also I failed to mention that in green we have the most prominent intervention on the building during the recent years, which is that glazed entryway by NNEAT architect that was approved and in the early 2000s and finalized in 2004. The building that we're dealing with is the rear facade of section H, which is barely visible from Washington Avenue, and I'll show you in a second. Here's that section. Again, this is the rear of that McKean Mid and White building. Here's the dome. It was left unfinished with brickwork, not a lot of ornamental finishes. The goal was that this is going to be covered by fuchsia extensions that really never happened. And when those extensions started to happen in the 1950s, they were designed with a very modern vocabulary. So here is a stairway from the 1950s in a photograph from 1966 that start to delineate the vocabulary in which the museum will expand on the rear. Here's the same extension. Here's the east facade of the McKean Mid and White building. And then here's that extension with the 1950s facade as the building is already getting ready for the next extension towards the rear. This is the addition from the 1970s, from 1978 in construction. Again, here's the east facade of the McKean Mid and White building, the 1950s stairway, and the building as it was completed in 1980. Look that there was only a 4 or 5-story building here, and this portion of the building is the one that is later extended with an addition. Here's the render of the addition to the extension, and here's a line of the Commission's statement approving this addition, in which it is acknowledged that the rear facade of the landmark building contains no features of architectural significance. So this is a brutalist, 1970s modernist extension of the like that we could talk about today that led to the demise of modernism, that eventually at that time the Commission is even approving and allowing it just to take place and I believe that it just within the framework that what is really important for this building is the original building, and then the rest is just really secondary. Here's another addition from 2010, which is a low-rise, 1-story entry dock to the building. So the building the section H is visible from the street, and this is the facade of that extension, the original, and the rooftop addition. Now, looking at it from the parking lot, looking west, you see the original building and the addition. Looking east, you see the dome, and we're looking on the parking lot, this rear facade. This is the area that we're proposing to intervene. In essence, this is a very modernist but brutalist, windowless, bulky building with no windows. And there's a lot of functions that take place indoors. This is a proposal that we have in front of you before. It's part of a more comprehensive renovation of the education department that is in that location that will be provided staff level as an interior renovation. So what we're proposing is to, in essence, remove all of these existing precast curtain walls at that location and replace them with a new glass and metal curtain wall. You see some of the details of what that windowless curtain wall is. It's actually cantilevered out, so there is a soffit, and then there is a roof at this location, and this is the area that we're proposing to work on. Briefly on the interiors, this is what you get when you get there. No windows, a few skylights, but really it's just a very dull area with no daylighting, and this is what we're trying to change as part of this renovation. More photo of the interiors, windowless with a few skylights, and this is precisely what is driving the renovation and the removal of the wall. If that was on the gallery, if you were to be on the art workshops or the offices, these are the areas that have no skylights. So you're really in an interior location with no views towards the exterior at all. So what we're proposing is to remove the roof and the skylights on that cantilever portion. There will be an interior renovation, but in essence, all the existing precast curtain wall between this and this portion will be removed. And again, there will be an interior renovation that will be revised at the staff review at staff level. And the proposed work is just to replace that precast curtain wall with a new glass and metal curtain wall. So here's the facade of the rear facade of the building, the original building, the extension, and here's the area that we're dealing with. A close-up of the existing condition and a close-up of the proposed condition. In essence, we're just removing curtain walls, and then these metal panels are going to be finished with the same color than the precast concrete. So here's some sections of the existing conditions. This is the typical existing precast curtain wall that we are proposing to remove. And here are the two typical sections of the new aluminum frame curtain wall with insulated panels that we are proposing at the two locations. This is a project that has been conceived really from inside out, where now you have two main areas on that education department, the galleries and the studio, and then you have the offices. The offices are the ones that are getting a larger window with a lower window sill, and the studio is getting a still tall window, but one that is not as low, so that there are more opportunities for pinning on the wall and providing more educational opportunities for the students on this area. So these are the renders. On the left, you have the existing building seen from the east, and on the right, you see a render of what is being proposed, which is in essence remove this curtain wall and precast curtain wall and put a new glass and aluminum curtain wall with the panels painted to match. Looking from the east and looking straight across from it. And this is the presentation.
So I fully appreciate the need to bring light and air into the building, but I'm curious, did you consider whether just puncturing the existing wall instead of removing it altogether and putting the panels?
So is that a
construction
It's a curtain
issue?
wall. So the existing precast assembly has 2 points of attachment to the structure, one that is here, and then the other one is there. If you were to perforate the existing precast, you will have to compromise the integrity of the structural integrity of the panels. And number two, you'll have to do a lot of reinforcing to try to punch those openings. The option of really just removing the panel and then just leaving like an apron and a suspended part, it goes against the notion of curtain wall itself, where you have 2 points of attachment to the structure. So that option was considered, but really due to the reality of the existing assembly, it was deemed necessary to remove these precast curtain walls and still retain a curtain wall, but in this case, we're proposing it to do it with a different material, so that it's clear that it's a different vocabulary and an intervention that is dated from a different time.
Well, building on what the chair was saying and what you just said, so go back to the rendering for a second. So you made a choice to do a couple of things that seem to undermine what you just said. Right? You said that you wanted to go in with a new system that has its own integrity and its own appearance. Yet you chose to color the spandrel to match the precast, and to leave the 2 precast ends. Help me understand why that was consistent with what you're saying and the right choice.
Right. So the typical panels between these bookends are flat. At the end, these are atypical in the sense that they're actually an L-shaped panel. Removing these L-shaped panels at the end would require to extend the renovation and to deal with more complex systems, because there would be more complex pieces that we have to work. This is a not-for-profit organization working also within a budget. So we went from a full-blown intervention to something that is a little bit more modest and more suited to the available budget. So the proposal is just to remove what we can, because it's also typical, and to leave in place these atypical conditions that will be more expensive and more complicated to address, but also to provide a more seamless transition between the existing and the new, in the sense that we could just retain the vocabulary of the existing precast and kind of bring that in from the adjacent panels into the new.
So the choice of the colors was intended to actually continue the precast, not to contrast with it.
Yes, and the reason why we chose to do so is because we felt that one of the options that we had at hand was to, for example, paint the precast in a totally different contemporary color that would be different. And we believe that by doing so, we were pretty much doing the same that had been done in the 1980s, when you had these louvers at these levels, which are actually painted with the same color of the curtain wall. So we felt that there were other building envelope assemblies, in essence, the louvers at this level and at this level, that are already painted with the same color than the precast. And we felt that by inserting a new color, we will be adding another level of reading and trying to bring more attention to this intervention. When we're trying to do is just make it as quiet as possible, so that we don't add more to this building that it's already a complicated building and a tough one to love, so that we could remain within the framework of just allowing the McKinney and White building to be the one that is stand up, and then have the addition and the renovation and the extension sort of like be secondary to the original building.
Right, but following that, the question, so one more time, explain why it is that you chose not to have the new panels be entirely glass, so that you would, potentially see the structure behind the apron that remains, but have them be all glass.
Right.
I don't
So
understand that.
it's a south-facing facade.
Yeah.
So an all-glass panel would have required more lighting control, and it would have posed some environmental challenges in terms of either the level of sun shading that may be required outside, and it will bring it will require a more complicated language and vocabulary to that protection of that existing facade. It's also given that you have like a 3-foot spandrel at each level, where the precast is in front of, just to have glass in front of it. It would be something that possible, but there would be some areas where you have to have some kind of glazed spandrel panel that, even though it could be in the metal, on the glass, will have to be insulated. So,
Or not, I mean, we don't know what that is.
well, we do know that there is a piece of concrete
It's definitely
there.
there. What it would mean to see it behind glass might be interesting. Okay, that's my question.
Okay, yes, Dana.
don't think this entirely is answered, but maybe it is already. So the fenestration it's driven by your interior. The fenestration is being driven by the interior design, not by the exterior. Otherwise, you might just have a solid band, or is it, what's driving the design of the actual windows?
That is precisely the case. So you have, in the education departments, you have two main components. You have the studios and workshops, and then you have the offices. So the design of the facade is primarily driven by what's happening inside. The area with the office is the one getting the larger windows with the lower window sills, and the area with the workshop is the one that is getting the taller parapet with the taller panel with the smaller windows. So,
thank you.
Yes, Kim?
At that level where they have the pavers, does anybody actually walk there?
only for maintenance. So this level with the pavers is actually up here, and the only way to get up here is through the mechanical room with these louvers. So no one. This is not accessible to the public. It's only accessible for maintenance whenever they want to change these light bulbs.
Because I wondered if there was a way to get light from above instead of just from the outside.
It's very narrow. It's a very narrow cantilever. It's about 5 to 6 feet only. So the effect of the skylights, even though are pretty much continuous, is very limited to that location. So a greater, longer, taller glaze fenestration would actually be more effective in bringing daylight in deeper into the space.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Are there any speakers on this item? Any speakers? All right. Community Board 9, their housing committee is in favor of the project. We also received a letter from Councilmember Lori Cumbo in support of the museum's plans. And we also received a joint letter from various electives, including Councilmember Cumbo, Councilmember Levin, Councilmember Eugene, Traeger, Lander, and Williams in support of this project. If we have no other questions, we can... Are there any other questions? Okay, we can close the hearing. Yes, Fred.
Well, as chairman of the board of the sister, or sibling, maybe I should just say, next door, the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, I'll make a wisecrack comment and then move on. We've worked very hard over the years at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden not to be able to see this wall, and it's part of it's designed by a good friend of mine. So, and I remember when it was built. So I say that all with a sense of in the family, let's call it. And I'm certainly supportive of this, of the idea of doing this. I think anything that the museum is doing to improve its functioning is something that I certainly wouldn't want to stand in the way of. And I could probably support this if this is the majority, the way it is. But I'm just looking at this thing a little more carefully. And in a way, you could say anything you do to this back wall is okay, and it almost is. But and certainly this is not brutalism at its best. Maybe the opposite, as a matter of fact. So the question then is how to deal with this, and I think Angel has done a good job. But I'm sort of looking at the thing, having it tell me what it is, and what it is, it seems to me, is these two bookends with a random series of openings with glass at the level of the surface. In other words, the glass is not recessed. But then there's that big middle panel with these two big gashes or I guess you could say 3, and then a partial gash up at the top where the director's office is, with a magnificent view out over the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. So I'm just wondering, you know, is there a different story that the building is telling because of these 2 bookends and then the middle section? And if it is, and I think it is, then I think what Adi was saying a minute ago, to treat the infill, and I fully understand why you can't punch holes in the prefab panels. The precast panels. That doesn't work. So you have to remove them, and then the question is, what do you put back? And my own thought is that if you put something back that is more maybe contrasts a little bit more with the precast, it would be better. And if it were seemingly one surface, I've just with my own pencil kind of darkened the whole thing a bit, and it seems to work better. Now I don't know if it's all glass, if it can be glass and metal, perhaps it can, but if it's all treated as one, more of a homogeneous one surface, I think one coloration, and maybe that coloration is darker, it might work.
And that's an interesting suggestion, right? I don't think that's absolutely necessary for at least for me to sort of support what they proposed over here. And there are different solutions to this. I think it would have, a different solution would have been to kind of treat this as a gash, like the gash above, and have a lot more recess and depth. But I think they're sort of balancing the program as well and the practicalities of the building. This is the rear of the building, so it's not your primary facade. It can be visible, but this is, it's a very utilitarian building. And so I think that the flatness and the punctuation of the glazing within this panel is not, to me, necessarily outside the vocabulary of the building. So some areas, the 2 sides, you in fact have a very flat kind of plane and the fenestration within that. And in other places, you have a very deep recess where you have the louvers and I think at the top windows for the offices. So I think I don't see this as necessarily something that is detracting from the building. It's at the lower level. And I understand the reason to, the practical aspect of not being able to go into the prefab fabric, but to somehow still make it somewhat seamless. And I think the idea, if you're going to use metal panels, to use a color that actually recedes is an appropriate solution. Yes, and then Michael. And Michael.
I think this is program-driven, and I don't know, for me, this is appropriate. It does what it's supposed to do without drawing attention to itself. I mean, this is the back of the building. If there's anything that's distracting and disgusting back here, it's all the automobiles that are parked in front of this thing. I think this is totally appropriate.
I'm with Fred on this one. I agree that it is far from the loveliest, brutalist building around, but it has an order. It is a facade. It was approved by this commission. And I think that in general, when we look to modifications of commission-approved things, we try to kind of guide the applicants to work within the stylistic and aesthetic and historical context of the building that they're operating on. And in a funny way, this application, while using this kind of oddly anachronistic modernist logic that doesn't look at it, kind of caricature modernist logic, where you don't look at aesthetics at all. All you look at is function and money, and you do the cheapest thing that works for the interior rooms. As time has passed and we've learned, that's a bogus argument. And there's lots of ways to skin a cat. There's lots of ways to solve this. First of all, there's no need to dismiss out of hand the notion of precast. Precast is cheap. How do you hang it? You build it, you're building an interior wall anyway. Build it out of concrete block and hang it on the concrete block. Not rocket science, not expensive. So point one is you don't have to dismiss the precast as an element because it's too expensive. Baloney. Number one. Number two, so I don't think that the precast as a material, I mean, I think the notion of using metal panels that's supposed to look like precast, it hasn't worked. It's never worked. It always looks terrible. It always looks like you're trying to make a Band-Aid out of a different material. It doesn't work. And I agree with Adi and Fred. The simplest thing is to just do it all in glass. And all right, so you don't want to have the full height glass on the interior. We've been doing spandrel glass since the Lever House. It's not rocket science. You can't, and it's not expensive.
Well,
it's very simple. There's a million ways to skin this.
So is your point that this is as is?
I don't think it's appropriate. It's a front facade. It should be consistent with the rest of the building.
All right. Other commissioners?
Just to expand on the question that I proposed. I mean, I think that one of the, as Fred said, this may not be a perfect example of brutalism. I'm not sure whether to say something is a good example or a bad example is, it tells us more about the brutalist, but in any event, one of the distinguishing features is that the system functions were exposed or were expressed. And so that's why I asked about the possibility of kind of following in the language of this edition, which is, and I appreciate the fact that you're working at it rather than punching holes for cost savings or not, that you're removing the panels as they were attached. I think that's interesting. So, but I'm saying, and the reason I brought up the glass idea, the full height glass, whether painted out or spandreled or not, is the notion that if it replaces the current panels, then we see the stuff behind it in some form, and it is it's sort of in keeping with the brutalist intention, or if this is brutalism, with this period of architecture. But the other thing I think that's interesting about it potentially, the possibility of seeing the system behind, is that it's strangely, I mean, it's very unlikely that the McKim, Mead and White master plan will be fulfilled. But there's something kind of aspirational, in my view, about seeing the kind of the cutoff, the thing that would become, seeing the ceiling and the two systems behind exposed through the glass. That in a sense it's kind of, it may grow still. There may be a possibility of adding to it because this is this kind of unfinished condition. So that's interesting to me. Whether I could approve this and it's appropriate, yes.
Okay. Other commissioners? Yes, Sharon.
Kind of sympathize with the view that's been expressed simply because the reason I ask about the fenestration being driven by the program is I just felt uncomfortable with the look of it with the current building as proposed. And, it's the back, it's not so important, but I think it actually would be better with some kind of more consistent banding in the back. And if they'd be willing to entertain this alternative that's being proposed, maybe that could be a good solution. And you never know in the future what you might want to do. You might want to have that possibility in the future for the office areas that might become something else, and of course it could become something else entirely too as far as use in the future. So the fact that there could be more potential transparency for that whole side, I see as maybe actually could be a plus for them, as long, it wouldn't have to be more expensive, which is obviously something we're all concerned about for these institutions. We don't want to put a burden on them. So anyway, that's it.
Right. I just think that, we have this before us. I don't want to second guess their program. This is the museum. They're looking at this presumably holistically. And so we can speculate, well, okay, if you put this material, get more out of it. But I think, I think we should defer in terms of their programming to the institution. I think for us, it's really that this is what's before us and whether we can support it as is. Of course, they're hearing our comments, and so again, there are different ways to approach providing light, and this is the approach they've taken, and if we think it's appropriate, then we should move ahead with its approval.
Quickly, I agree that I don't think we should be second-guessing their programming. The programming in museums is quite it's complicated. Sometimes you need closed spaces, sometimes you need open spaces. Who knows how an all-glass exterior would impact their HVAC, etc. But I do agree that regardless of what the our feelings about the original, it's cohesive. And just to go back to what Michael said, this looks like a Band-Aid. And so I think who knows what you're going to do in the future in terms of the rest of the facade. And I think you don't want to have this facade look like, well, we just kind of slap this in, the colors don't match, the entire, the materiality is different, and I think you might want to go back and explore. I appreciate what Commissioner Bland said in a way, because he said, okay, well, maybe you should do something different, because then you're not trying. This looks like you're trying to match but didn't quite work. Or maybe you should just bite the bullet and hang the precast and just have the glass set in it so it still works together holistically. I mean, you are an art museum, so I think the integrity of what each of your facades looks like is kind of important.
So I think we can, and with obviously encouraging the museum to continue to ponder or think about some of the comments we've made. Obviously, it can be refined. But one thing I would say is that sometimes institutions may want to come in with a very discrete intervention and to make that as simple and seamless as possible. And working within whatever structure they have. And so, yes, they could have taken a more aggressive approach and making it a statement and treating the space inside differently. But I don't think that's necessarily what's before us. So yes.
One last thing. I would just, again, suggest, I'm going to vote for it. I just want to be sure everybody knows that. But if the coloration of the new metal panels were not trying to be the same color as the precast, to me that would help a whole lot. If it were more, say, the color of whatever one is going to second guess the glass to be like. I mean, in this rendering, which it's reflecting a beautiful cobalt blue sky on that day, sort of a grayish, bluish, something like that, the whole thing might get exponentially better from my eyes, but I'm going to vote for it the way it is too, if that's the will of the group.
Okay. Well, I think actually, that suggestion is quite intriguing, and it's simple. And so why don't we ask them to continue to work with staff on thinking of the color of the panel and perhaps with the idea of trying to make this not seem just as an intervention, but as perhaps a design element. And I think the color actually treats this as something more unified, and it really is, I think, a simple change to what you proposed right now that actually may overall work within the composition. Okay? All right. So with that, John?
In the matter of docket number 19-11-486, 200 Eastern Parkway, the Brooklyn Institute of Arts and Sciences, the Brooklyn Museum of Art, an individual landmark. The application is to alter the rear facade I note that the proposed work is located at the rear extension, which was designed by Prentice and Chan, Olhausen Architects, built in 1974 to 77 to accommodate offices, classrooms, and mechanical rooms, and altered in about 1985 by Joseph Tonetti and Associates Architects. The Commission further notes that the rear facade is visible from public thoroughfares, including the Brooklyn Botanical Garden, Washington Avenue, and the museum's parking lot. I recommend approval, noting that the proposed windows will be installed in a late 20th century addition. Therefore, no significant architectural or historic features of the building will be affected by the proposed work, that the proposed modifications will be installed at the lower level of the rear facade, thereby minimizing the effect on the historic portions of the building, that the flat surface of the metal paneling will match the existing stucco cladding and therefore will blend with the overall design of the rear facade, that the simply designed single-pane windows will harmonize with the existing fenestration, and that the proposed work will not detract from the special architectural or historic character of this individual landmark. I also recommend that the applicant work with staff on the color of the metal panels to create a greater contrast and imply that it is an independent design element.
All in favor? Any opposed? One opposed. This application's approved.
Okay, Commissioners, item 4 is an application for a certificate of appropriateness. The Borough of Manhattan, docket number 1911351. This is 115 West 18th Street, aka 113 through 133 West 18th Street, and 110 through 124 West 19th Street, located within the Ladies Mile Historic District. It's a neo-Renaissance style department store addition designed by Kimball and Thompson and built in 1896. The application is to legalize the installation of a blade sign without Landmarks Preservation Commission permits.
Good morning, Commissioners. Caroline Kane Levy from the Preservation Department. The application before you concerns a sign on the 18th Street facade, and the application is to legalize the installation of this sign, which occurred without LPC permits. We have the team here for review work, and Glenn Rocco is here.
Hi, my name is Gwen Rocco. I'm the Director of Public Affairs for WeWork for our tri-state region. If anyone's not familiar, well, first I'd like to thank you all for letting us speak to you today. We really appreciate it. If anyone's not familiar with WeWork, we're a shared workspace company. We provide shared workspaces and private offices to businesses of all kinds and sizes, everyone from startups and freelancers to Fortune 500 companies like Microsoft. This location at 115 West 18th Street serves as our global headquarters. We currently occupy 4 floors of the building, floors 2 through 5. 4 and 5 serve as our headquarters, 2 and 3 are our regular WeWork. We have about 1,800 WeWork employees and members who are using this building on a daily basis. We also have a small lobby, which is through the door right beneath the sign on the first floor. And we are currently working with our landlord to also occupy the 6th floor. So our goal is to have the full space in the building. The remainder of the ground floor is occupied by the Metropolitan Pavilion, which is an event space next door to us. And I'm going to turn things over to Cass Stackelberg, who will walk you through our presentation.
Thank you, Gwen. Good morning, Commissioners. Cass Stackelberg, Legal Space Management Partners. This is 115 West 18th Street. As Caroline mentioned, this sign is what we're here to discuss. We're here to propose legalization of that sign. We have detailed photographs so you'll be able to actually see it. The building, 115 West 18th, runs through to West 19th Street. It's shown in red on the Sanborn map on the upper right. This was a building constructed as part of the B. Altman complex, finished in 1896, and was part of a massive complex of buildings that stretched almost halfway from 6th Avenue to 7th Avenue at one time for B. Altman, located in the Ladies Mile Historic District. It's a 6-story building, as Gwen described, and WeWork occupies most of that building. Some existing condition photographs. So a detailed photograph of the sign on the upper right. It's a non-illuminated sign. It's set on a 5-inch wide aluminum painted blade with 2-inch thick polished stainless steel letters. And it is located at the building entry. You can see here in this photograph as well. The building is about 150 feet of frontage. Signaling the entry is an important feature for WeWork. and we think, given the scale of the building, it's an appropriate addition to the building. Some overall views on the left side of this slide, looking east toward 6th Avenue on the top. The sign is here, and the building extends down to this point, and then looking from 6th Avenue back west across West 18th Street. This is 115, and the sign is here on the north side of the street. Some historic photographs of the building. This is from 1918 on the left and 1929 on the right. These are photographs after Bealdman had left this complex that had moved up to 5th Avenue. But you can see the building historically had this very large canopy. It had signage on either end of the canopy. The building entry was historically under that section of the canopy, and there was a flagpole on the building as well, highlighted here at the sill of the 3rd floor. Elsewhere, sort of more broadly looking at the district, as you know, Ladies Mile really is very much a commercial district, and 6th Avenue has historically served as its commercial spine. The 6th Avenue elevated both brought about the intense sort of commercial nature and vitality of the district. The mid-blocks, these are 3 images of the block between 5th and 6th within the district, but the mid-blocks, in addition to 6th Avenue, also had large-scale signage. These are 3 images showing multi-story bracket signs or blade signs extending off of the upper floors of the building. So signage historically has always been a component, not just of 6th Avenue, the sort of large department stores that populated 6th Avenue, but also the side streets as well. We're missing a slide here. Turning to the existing elevation of the building, this is the frontage on 18th Street. This is the sign sort of seen in building context, relatively small in the overall scale, and then a section on the far right showing its position above the sidewalk. A detail elevation. Fortunately, the sign is not red, but just shown here to highlight it. As I said, the sign is 5 inches in width. It's 7 feet tall, 84 inches in height. And a little more than 17 feet off the sidewalk. It was attached onto the painted limestone facade, as you can see in the photograph. Its attachment didn't require any removal of any significant historic fabric. Some details showing the signage. I think this might be the sort of clearest. A 5-inch wide box, 2-inch letters. The letters stand off of the box by 3/4, 84 inches in height total. And I'll just leave it at
Cass, how big would the sign be if it met all the criteria or guidelines?
Criteria for
signs.
For the staff level rules?
Yes.
It would be 24 inches tall. It would be this tall.
And it's now?
It's 84 inches in height. So you can see, I think the purpose, historically the signage that I showed you in this slide, the purpose of this signage historically was to draw people really from 6th Avenue into these mid-blocks. And that's really exactly the same purpose of the signage that's been installed. We work, as Gwen said, as the primary tenant in this building. There are a lot of people, both employees of WeWork and also members who come from 6th Avenue, from the subway, as well as from 7th Avenue, and finding the building, finding the entry is a very significant and important feature. So we feel that this signage, which is modest in scale in terms of its building scale, and has an importance similar to the historic signage, is an appropriate addition to the building into the district.
What's the pink sign?
It's on the lamppost. These are
on the lamppost.
Signs, yeah,
I
those
see.
are signs that the city puts up for
Right.
various
And-
events.
And I'm a little unclear, you may have said it, I'm sorry. Did WeWork put up the sign, or was it there
They were
by
putting
previous?
the sign up. They put it up last year. There was a different team in place at the time, and it was put up without a permit.
So there was never any blade there at all? It wasn't like, this is not an enlarged version, there was nothing there?
There was nothing in that location.
Final question, is the flagpole escutcheon still there?
I don't think so.
Okay.
A couple more. It's not illuminated, right?
It is not illuminated.
And are there other examples of blade signs like this that are just kind of applied to buildings in the district
In
now?
your packet, for some reason, the slide isn't in the set. I don't have a. It was. Sorry.
It's okay.
sorry, the wrong presentation landed in.
Happens
there's a whole
to the
page
best of
missing
us.
with, I'm happy to pass this around.
I guess we don't have it, huh?
But there are numerous signs, there's flagpole signs and mid-block blade signs in the district. Obviously, most of the signage is concentrated currently on 6th Avenue, but there is some signs of mid-block, whether they're blade signs or flags that exist.
Are there other questions? Okay. Are there speakers on the item? No speakers. All right. Community Board 4 recommends approval. And we have a letter of support from Westville, Yanif Cohen, the CEO of Westville. So if there are no more questions, we can close the hearing. And now comments.
As it happens, I walked past this location last night and did the same thing Monday night a week ago, and I thought, wow, I wonder if that was done on staff level. That's a really nicely done sign. And what sort of does it for me also, and I think the sheet A900 shows it well, that it really is kind of a robust facade, and that the sign, it just seems to work very well within that articulation of the facade. So I think it's approvable.
Any other commissioners have thoughts? Yeah, I think the scale of the building also helps suggest that this is approvable for me. Okay, then all in favor?
I'm going to read it.
Okay. Oh yeah. Sorry. You've got to read it. You're reading.
In the matter of LPC 1911351, that's 115 West 18th Street, aka 113133 West 18th Street, and 124 West 19th Street in the Ladies Mile Historic District, a neo-Renaissance style department store addition designed by Kimball and Thompson, built in 1896. The application is to legalize the installation of a blade sign without Landmarks Preservation Commission permit. I note the style, scale, materials, and details of the building are among the features which contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Ladies Mile Historic District, and I recommend approval, finding that the blade sign, while larger than others in Ladies Mile Historic District, is in compliance with what the current zoning allows, and there is historic precedent for large projecting signs in the historic district, that the blade sign is mounted near the entrance of the tenant space that it advertises, and that tenant occupies almost the entirety of the building, that the blade sign is relatively small in terms of projection and height given the large scale of the building, that the illuminated mechanisms have been removed from the original installation, and that the sign, consisting of bronze finished aluminum sign box with stainless steel dimensional letter, blends with the material palette of the building, does not call undue attention to itself nor detract from the significant architectural features, and that the overall amount of signage is not excessive, nor does it detract from the architectural and historic commercial character of the Ladies Mile Historic District.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? No. Okay, thanks.
Okay, Commissioners, item 5 on the agenda is an application for a certificate of appropriateness, the Borough of Manhattan, docket number 185169. This is 310 West End Avenue, located within the West End Collegiate Historic District Extension. This is a Romanesque Revival-style apartment building designed by Emery Roth and built in 1924 to 25, and the application is to alter windows and install louvers.
Good morning, Commissioners. Julianne Wiesner-Chianese, Preservation Staff. 310 West End Avenue is located on the northwest corner of West End Avenue at the intersection of West 75th Street and West End Avenue in the West End Collegiate Historic District Extension. The proposal, is to replace existing double-hung windows with new assemblies featuring operable windows over louvers within the existing openings at the 16th floor of the building. The proposal cannot be approved at staff level because the operation and configuration of the windows will not match the historic operation and configuration. There is a master plan for the installation of through-wall louvers at brickwork beneath windows for this building at the lower floors. However, there is a band course at the 16th floor, and this floor of the building is not covered by the master plan. So window 1, indicated here, will feature an awning window and will match the historic upper sash in size and configuration. Window 2 will feature a casement. This window will be taller than the historic upper sash and will feature this horizontal muntin, excuse me, which will align with the meeting rails of neighboring windows. A representative from the architect's office, Jonathan Carrera, is available to answer any questions.
Do we need a presentation? No, okay. Are there speakers on this item? Yes.
Good morning, Commissioners. Anna Sifter for Landmark West. I've got the wrong one up. Give me a second. The Landmark West Certificate of Appropriateness Committee reviewed this application and feels that this proposal makes perfect sense. Maintaining the upper multiple light sash intact and replacing the full lower pane with a louver which fills the frame is an elegant solution to this need. Avoiding a projecting air conditioner maintains the volumetric read of the 75th Street facade, and decorative grillwork further screens the West End Avenue elevation. This is an instant where the applicant has balanced applicant need with an attuned sense of the landmark. This apartment could serve as a model for a building-wide air conditioner plan. Our committee fully supports this application and recommends approval. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Patrick Waldo, Historic Districts Council.
Thank you. Patrick Waldo, Historic Districts Council. HDC objects to the removal of the historic sash on this apartment building. A more sensitive approach may involve putting an air conditioner in the top sash or tucking it behind the ironwork. Both of these approaches would be reversible and minimally disruptive to the building's historic fabric. An air conditioner that doesn't protrude too far, one that would be flush with the wall, would be an even less intrusive solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Landmarks West, yes, is not here to speak, I guess, but they submitted. I'm sorry, is that right? Yes, sorry, there it is. And the community board approves the application. Any more questions around the commission table? Okay. We ready to? Do you need to respond?
If there's any questions, Jonathan from the Special Architect, Project Manager, and gladly answer any questions.
All right, and would you like to respond to any of the testimony that was given?
In reference to the AC.
Maybe go to the speaker.
Yeah, we have looked into solutions to avoid the ACs that you see on all the windows. During summers, a lot of the tenants at this time, they go ahead and put the ACs. This is a apartment that's being renovated, and we're putting in a central AC condition, so that way minimizing the number of windows that will be affected with putting each AC condenser on the outside. If the tenant was to remove this system, the windows could be put back in place. It's not irreversible, it could always come back to have that window. But for now, the market for tenants, it requires an AC as the building is being currently, the apartment is vacant and needs to be sold back to that co-op.
Okay, thank you. No further questions? Yes.
I have a question about window number 2. That's the piece between the vent and the bottom of the window. What is that made of?
That's a glazing. Yes, it's what happened is that this is a very small room. In order to meet light and air requirements for residential space, it was required, we couldn't make that, the whole section of the lower portion louver area in order to meet the lighting area requirements for it. So that'll be a glazing.
So it's 7 lights.
So it'll be the glazings that will match the upper portion and a glaze.
Okay. Further questions? Okay, if not, we can close the public hearing. Any further comment? Seems okay? All right, Diane, I guess you're to read.
In the matter of a certificate of appropriateness, Borough of Manhattan, LPC 185169, 310 West End Avenue, West End Collegiate Historic District Extension. Application is to alter windows and install louvers. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the West End Collegiate Historic District Extension. I recommend approval, finding that an existing decorative band course prevents the installation of a louver at plain masonry beneath the windows as an alternative. That the change in operation of the windows will help maintain compliance with light and air requirements mandated by the city's health and safety codes once the louvers are installed, and will only be perceptible when the windows are open. That the proposed sashes will match the historic windows in terms of configuration, except that the windows at the western facade will feature an additional light and horizontal muntin, maintaining alignments with the meeting rail of the neighboring windows and supporting the unity of the fenestration pattern. That the proposed louvers will be mounted flush with the window sashes and finished to match the surrounding window frames, helping them to maintain a discrete presence. That this limited variation from the historic fenestration pattern at the top floor of this large building will be barely discernible from public thoroughfare, and that the work will not diminish the special historic and architectural character of the West End Collegiate Historic District Extension.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? No. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioners, item 6 is an application for certificate of appropriateness, Borough of Manhattan, docket number 1911041. This is 113 West 77th Street, located within the Upper West Side Central Park West Historic District. It's a neo-Greek style row house designed by Christian Blinn and built in 1883 to 84, and the application is to legalize the installation of windows without Landmarks Preservation Commission permits.
Good morning, Commissioners. Abby Hurlbut, Preservation staff. The application is to legalize the installation of square-headed, white finished metal 1/1 double-hung sashes within the arch-headed windows at the parlor and second floor levels of the front facade, installed without Landmarks Preservation Commission permits at 113 West 77th Street, which is located on the north side of West 77th Street between Amsterdam and Columbus Avenues in the Upper West Side Central Park West Historic District. So according to the applicant, the windows were installed around the year 2000. The units at the parlor and the second floor levels were purchased by the current owners around 2004 and 2006, following the installation of the windows. And then finally, the violation for the installation of these windows was issued in the year 2011. The owner is here to give you more detail on the proposal.
Good morning. I'm Terry Anderson. I live on the second floor, and it's my kitchen renovation that got us here today. I purchased the apartment, like she said, in 2006 and was unaware that the windows had been replaced, not according to the landmarks regulations, and didn't find this out until I filed to do a kitchen renovation this summer. I have a single parent, I have 2 small kids, and I rented an apartment so I could get this kitchen renovation done over their summer break, only to find that this violation existed. the co-op, we have 5 owners in the co-op. The co-op's well aware now of what the violation is, and we're more than happy and willing to work with Landmarks so that we can correct violation. 100% no problem with it. My problem is that financially I'm tens of thousands of dollars into this kitchen project and have rented a place for the summer for myself and my kids. So I guess really we're just seeking to cooperate with Landmarks and fix this down the line. We just ask that it doesn't have to be done right now so that I could move forward this summer. I think that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Before we finish up, Commissioners, I want to take you through the presentation really quickly. So this was the designation photo right here. Here are some close-up photos and adjacent windows. These are the windows in question. You can see the square-headed sashes. Excuse me. Here's the photos of the building. Here are even closer photos of the third floor windows and parlor floor level windows. These are the adjacent buildings on each side. These are some examples of some of the conditions on the street. These are both grandfathered conditions. And then here are the super close-up photos of the framing and the sash replacement. Any other questions on this?
Questions, Commissioners? Yes.
I understand, I think, but I'm just curious, why not do this work sort of while the kitchen work is being done? I don't think I really understand. I mean,
From what I understand, from what staff understands, is that it's really a financial issue. They can't, we told them about the options that we have is an escrow. So they could put up an escrow and work with our enforcement department to do that. Unfortunately, that's usually about a multiple of that, which is figured out with the violations department. That's really our only vehicle other than legalizing or having some sort of commission action.
So Mark, do we have an option to legalize and require them to do this down the road? Is that a possibility?
Yes. So on occasion, when the commission deals with these unfortunate situations where someone purchases a building, there's no violation on it, and it only comes to light much later, we have in the past given people a time frame to come up with the money and finances, whatever it takes to sort of fix the problem. And so the staff is recommending in this case that there be, that the existing windows, that there be an approval, which is sort of a strange term, but an approval with modifications in the sense that the modifications, they'll be replacing these windows within the 6-year time period of the C of A, either through a staff approval or by coming back to the commission for something that the commission would approve. And we just sort of feel like that deals with sort of the equitable issue of they had no reason to know there was a violation here. It's long-standing. The windows, will probably, we think they're 17 years old as is.
So you're saying we're not going to be punitive? I'm kidding you, Mark.
Ultimately, who is the co-op responsible for the replacement of windows, or are the individual unit owners?
My understanding is that it is a co-op issue. We have 5 owners. It's brownstone. They're all floor-throughs. And when this all came up, to my surprise, I contacted an attorney to find out, and he looked at our proprietary lease, and it is apparently a co-op issue.
Because there are other ways to deal with it when the co-op is responsible. I mean, the co-op has a reserve fund, hopefully. They could do the improvement. There could be assessments made over time. I mean, that's just one other thing to consider.
I think the approach the staff's recommending is simply to since it sort of has come out of the blue, to allow the co-op and the individual shareholders to sort of try to address it in a sort of more systematic way, and this gives them a little time to address that issue.
right. Just one more thing. Do we know, Michael and Fred and everyone, can this work be done on the exterior only, or when the replacement has to happen, it has to happen on the inside as well?
It depends on what finishes have been added on the inside. It certainly can be done after the without a lot of disruption.
Without a lot, because I was going to say, if there was disruption, you should think about that, because you might not want later to.
I would love to do that. It's really a financial issue for me. I mean, I would have no problem doing it now. I just assume this could all go away and be corrected yesterday. It's just a financial problem.
Okay. Further questions? All right, we'll go to public testimony. Patrick Waldo.
Patrick Waldo, Historic Districts Council. Had this application been brought before the commission as it was supposed to have been, HDC hopes the commission would never have allowed such an inappropriate installation of windows. For a historic building of this nature, located on such an important block with such remarkable historic integrity and cohesiveness, details matter. The plane of the window and reveal of the masonry are both important elements in this building's historic design. This unsympathetic and poorly executed window installation negates that very important masonry reveal, taking away from the character of the opening. The windows this applicant has chosen are the wrong color and the wrong material. We urge the Commission to reject this request for legalization and instruct the applicant to install the correct windows. Thanks.
Thank you. Anna Siftar from Landmarks West.
Commissioners, as a rule, the Landmark West Certificate of Appropriateness Committee opposes legalization of work installed without LPC permits. When property owners ignore the landmarks law and make changes without the Commission's guidance and consent, all too frequently the results are at best unremarkable and at worst destructive. In either case, the practice of legalizing alterations after the fact in essence penalizes property owners who often go to great lengths to comply with landmarks regulations by rewarding those who flout the law. In the case of 113 West 77th Street is an example that is destructive. The elegant brick molds that remain give clues to what the original windows once were, and these apertures deserve the arched upper sash of a double-hung window. Applying for legalization should ensure the provision of a minimal threshold of research and evidence. The onus is on the applicant. The applicant's presentation does not delineate any of the prior conditions and does not attempt to provide detailed profiles for the current illegally installed specimen as defense. This landmark deserves better. Our committee recommends denial of this legalization. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Next is Jay Adolph.
Yes, J. Adolph, CB7. You actually rendered most of what I was going to say moot. We reviewed this, and it seems everybody agrees that the windows as installed are inappropriate and shouldn't be legalized, but we have applicants who are willing to correct the violation, and what we recommended, as you see in our resolution, was a time period, a 15-month. We recommended a 15-month window, no pun intended. And the other issue that was brought to our attention was we were told that your violations section required an escrow of 3 times the estimated amount of the restoration. And you've heard that the issue here is really time and finances. And so we also recommended that the escrow to cure the violation be reduced from 3 times the amount to 1/2 of the lowest estimate. It was just our opinion as to create an escrow which would lock in the obligation of the owners to do the replacement, but give them the time and not impose a heavy financial burden before they have to come up with the money to do it. So that was our position on it. Thank you.
Thank you. And all of that is written in the official communication from Community Board 7 as well. So no further speakers on the item? Then we'll close the public hearing. Have comments? Comments? Aha. Yes. Would you like to respond in any way to the public testimony?
I think everybody's summarized pretty well.
Right.
It's really a financial concern, even the escrow we can do.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So, comments by the commissioners?
I think the approach that the staff and Mark suggested is appropriate. You know, we'll approve this and set a time period, and I'm satisfied with that.
I also would agree with the comment about a reduction of the escrow. I mean, if someone's involved in a kitchen renovation, everyone knows that that's not going to cost what it originally was going to cost, adding additional burden. So I would be in favor of a reduction of the escrow as well.
Well, if we do what the staff recommends, then the escrow.
There isn't.
Yeah,
there's
I
no
was going to
escrow.
respond. There's no escrow requirement in these. That's for a staff review and approval.
So what we're doing is approving.
Well, we're approving that sort of they're temporary, they're remaining there. And so in the future, for example, if someone else wanted to do work on the property, the sort of normal escrow requirements or other things wouldn't kick in. It's sort of, we all recognize that this is what the commission's allowing. They have this period of time to fix the problem, and that's the approval. So.
And the wording here is,
Yeah.
represents that?
Yeah.
Well, okay, good. All right, if we're ready to, yes?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I agree that, the important thing is to have the windows properly replaced as soon as is practicable and, without putting an unreasonable burden on the owner. So, I also agree with the solution proposed by the staff, and obviously the staff's going to monitor this to make sure it takes place.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right.
That's pretty much what I was going to say. Yep. Okay, I'm next.
Ready to go, Ken? It's your role.
Okay. In the matter of 113 West 77th Street, Upper West Side, Central Park West Historic District, a neo-Greek style row house designed by Christian Bland and built in 1883 to 1884. Application is to legalize the installation of windows without Landmarks Preservation Commission permits. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Upper West Side, Central Park West Historic District. I recommend approval with modifications, finding that the windows were installed prior to the current owner's purchasing of the units, that the existing window sashes match the historic window sashes in terms of configuration and operation, that the windows feature a wood brick mold, thereby recalling the significant details of the windows in terms of basic design and material, and that the work does not preclude the future installation of windows that will match the historic windows in terms of details and material. I find, however, that the windows do not match the historic windows in terms of material, details, and finish, which are a significant feature of the building style. Therefore, I recommend that the windows be replaced within 6 years pursuant to the commission level or staff level action. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Commissioners, item 7 is an application for a certificate of appropriateness, Borough of Manhattan, docket number 19-09950. This is 122 East 66th Street, the Cosmopolitan Club. Located within the Upper East Side Historic District. This is a neo-Regency style club building designed by Thomas Harlan Ellett and built in 1931 to 32. The application is to install mechanical equipment at the terrace.
The application before you is 122 East 66th Street, which is also known as the Cosmopolitan Club. It's located between Lexington and Park Avenues in the Upper East Side Historic District. This proposal is for work at the 3rd floor, including the removal of existing mechanical equipment and the installation of new mechanical equipment that will be set back from the decorative railing. These photos show renderings in orange of what is being proposed. And I will also show you some mock-up photos. So you'll
white is a foam board that's up on the setback terrace. The tree is obstructed from some views. This is from Lexington Avenue. The applicant, Martin Briggs, from Walter D. Melvin Architects, is here to discuss the proposal.
The scope of work is basically So the scope of work is basically to deal with some issues at the club that they have with their exhaust fan for their kitchen hood. And the majority of the work is related to a makeup air unit that's going on that second floor. Right now they have an existing makeup air unit, but it does not heat or cool the air before it goes into the kitchen. So in winter, they're having to not use it. They basically plastic it up with saran wrap because the staff gets freezing cold. When they don't use it, it causes another problem at the club with the negative pressure, which causes all the doors to close rapidly. So, so we have ADA compliant door hardware, door closers, and then we've got this negative pressure issue that's closing the doors rapidly. So it's kind of ballooning on everything. So what this is basically the majority of the work is a larger fresh air intake, fresh air makeup air fan that has a heating and cooling unit attached to it. The reason that it's bigger is that it has a heating and cooling unit as part of that unit. Actually, if you look at, so if you look at here, this is where the old fan was. You see it dashed. The new fan is that unit there. It's using the same ductwork penetration that was there previously. This is, again, the units wrapped up, the old exhaust fan unit here and here that's wrapped up, and this would be the new unit, would be that size. These are actually the mock-ups of the existing conditions and the proposed conditions, but then in Photoshop we went over and overlaid them in colors, because I don't know if you saw in the other photos, you really can barely see anything with the trees and everything else. But that's basically the situation. We worked with the MEP from the club to try to find the smallest unit we could find that he was comfortable, that could be used in service basically continually. And that's what we have right there. And then the only other changes was at the ground floor. They used to put air conditioning in these units to take them out, window ACs, and they're proposing to put two additional condenser units on that roof, which already has a number of condenser units. And that's basically the scope.
The orange shows just the new stuff?
The orange shows just the new stuff, and the yellow shows all of the old stuff.
So of the old stuff, is any of that staying on?
So the small yellow condensers that are there now are staying on. That is not staying on.
So there'll be a total of 5 condensers plus the big
right. So there's
fresh air thing.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 condensers in fresh air.
Why these guys couldn't put them on the roof?
Yeah. So the condensers that they have now are not on the roof. The roof area actually has condensers on it, and there's another area where they plan to put condensers. The club doesn't have air conditioning, so they're moving towards a master plan for air conditioning.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
So that space isn't really available. There's the building itself has a series of terraces as you go up, and really the only roof space that's available is this upper roof space.
Because the roof terraces are used for functions?
They're functions, yeah. They're quartile terraces.
Yeah, that basically was my question, which is, do you have a plan potentially for dealing with this in the future in a better way? While this might be a necessary situation now as part of your air conditioning the building and other things, hopefully.
Well, the exhaust fan itself, really the major unit that you see, there's really nowhere else to put that because of the size of the duct that we need to pull down through the building. So that needs to go basically over that ductwork penetration.
And so that's a permanent. Yeah, right. The longer term plan that you mentioned is an air conditioning plan.
With condensers.
And some of that at least could go on the roof,
yes.
the top roof.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other questions, commissioners? All right, we'll turn to public testimony and ask Patrick Waldo of the Historic District Council.
Patrick Waldo, Historic Districts Council. The terrace of this graceful building is not an appropriate place for bulky mechanical equipment. These beautiful porches were not designed as storage areas. The Neo-Regency style reflected in this historic building's design is very uncommon for New York City, and the elaborate ironwork is a major contributing factor to this building's unique and elegant style, and this equipment will only detract from that ornate design. On an important block directly facing the armory, visibility of this equipment should be carefully considered. This mechanical equipment is far too visible. Our committee suggests the applicant investigate other possibilities for the location of this mechanical equipment. Perhaps they could install this on the roof or on the back of the building. Maybe they could sacrifice a room to put in a split system and put a louver in the side window, which would allow for air to circulate through the whole floor. A number of different options would be preferable to what the applicant has proposed today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Elizabeth Fagan of the Friends of the Upper East Side.
Hi, Elizabeth Fagan, Friends of the Upper East Side Historic Districts. Our Preservation Committee felt that the proposed HVAC units, although visible, will be a slight improvement to the existing. Although the central makeup air unit is much larger than the existing units, its location spanning the width of the central terrace bay will help to consolidate and regularize the equipment, which is currently of varying shapes and sizes. While we understand the constraints of the equipment location and size, it would be preferable if the units did not rise above the height of the iron railing. We recognize the modern needs of the club and can support this application if the paint treatment to the new units will indeed match the facade and be as inconspicuous as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Community Board 8, at least the committee only, is that right? Committee only? Recommends approval as presented. Would the applicant like to respond in any way to the?
I don't know if I need to respond, but I do want to point out that in terms of relocating the fan, it really isn't feasible because of the ductwork situation. And then also, I didn't point out that the plan is to paint all the equipment gray, so at least it backgrounds off of that white railing. So I think that the front of the building, the real, the real design feature is that front trellis work, which they recently restored, and we try to background it against the wall.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Then we can close the public hearing and move to comments. Any comments, commissioners? Seems acceptable? Okay. Michael Goldblum?
Okay. Regarding 122 East 66th Street, the Cosmopolitan Club in the Upper East Side Historic District, the application is to install mechanical equipment at the terrace. I note that this building's style, scale, and materials and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Upper East Side Historic District. I recommend approval, finding that the work will not damage any significant architectural features, that the installations will replace existing visible mechanical equipment and will be only slightly more visible than that equipment is currently from the street, that the equipment will be set back as far as possible on the terrace, painted in a neutral gray color to blend in with the facade and will not exceed the height of the railings, and will be only visible from a public thoroughfare through the railings, and that the work will not detract from any significant architectural features of the building.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? No, the motion carries then.
Okay,
That
Commissioners.
concludes the public hearing portion of our day. We now move to the public meeting. So I move that, what? Not yet? Not yet? When? After? Okay.
So we have two public meeting items, the first of which is docket number 1909863. This is 128 West 82nd Street, located within the Upper West Side Central Park West Historic District. Jacobean revival-style row house designed by Emmanuel Gandolfo and built in 1885-86. The application is to amend certificate of appropriateness 152476 for alterations to the rear facade.
Good morning, Commissioners. Karina Bishop, Preservation Staff. The application before you is 128 West 82nd Street, a Jacobean Revival-style row house built in 1885. which is located between Amsterdam and Columbus Avenues in the Upper West Side Central Park West Historic District. The application is to amend Certificate of Appropriateness 152476, which was issued on December 20th, 2013, approving exterior alterations at the non-visible rear facade and at the two-story rear extension. This also included enlarging window openings at the second floor of the rear facade and the removal of a portion of the second floor of the rear extension. So you can see the rear extension is in this photo here. It extends almost to the full lot. The applicant is coming forward to modify the previously approved work to include enlarging window openings at the second and third floors and the extension of the second floor roof terrace over the open setback at the first story of the extension, as well as the installation of decorative ironwork, which will match the ironwork at the primary facade. The applicant is also proposing to retain the existing bay window on the western elevation and to add lot line windows on the eastern elevation of the existing extension. And the lot line windows will face an alleyway, which you can see here, and then the roof of the adjacent police station. The architect, John Torborg, is here to answer any questions.
Okay, so I move that we open the meeting to allow the applicant to present its modifications to the commission. A second? Thank you. Okay.
Good morning. The proposal that we have is working with...
Can you just state your name for the record?
John Torborg. The existing structure in the bay window. The project from the 2014 had a new owner in a new program. It was a two-family house, and now it's a single-family house. And the program that we developed was different in the sense that the top of the roof, or what is the second floor, became the occupiable floor, the public floor, the kitchen floor. And therefore, the bedroom went down to what is the bay window. And therefore, we wanted to utilize the space that we had in the bay and also the top of what became the existing space we can see in the original, and then just expand that, open it up, similar to the 2014 space. So. This is showing the plan at the lower level and at the first floor and at the second floor space and the upper two floors as well. The bulkhead has not changed. There's no impact to the roof line, to the front of the building. All the preservation elements of the 2014 scheme are we're going to embrace.
Okay, thank you. Further questions by the commission? No? Can close the hearing? We're just open, all right. Okay. Then further comments by the commission? Ready to vote?
Yep.
Okay, yep, okay. Michael Devonshire.
In the matter of 128 West 82nd Street in the Upper West Side Central Park West Historic District, an application to amend Certificate of Appropriateness 152476 for alterations to the rear facade. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed changes to the previously approved work at the rear of the building will not be visible from any public thoroughfare and will not eliminate any significant architectural features from the rear facade. That the size and placement of the proposed rear facade masonry openings at the second and third floors featuring multi-light steel and glass windows separated by spandrel panels will not extend to the full width of the building and will be in keeping with the scale and character of the individual row house. that the proposed alterations to the existing rear yard addition will reduce the bulk of the addition while keeping the same footprint and will not overwhelm the building or the central green space. That enlarging the previously approved terrace at the third floor will maintain the open setback at the second story and not increase the occupiable volume of the addition. And the proposed work will not detract from the historic character of the building or the Upper West Side Central Park West Historic District.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, Commissioners, we have one more item, and that is an application for a certificate of appropriateness, the Borough of Manhattan, docket number 180172. This is 49 through 51 Chambers Street, the Immigrant Industrial Savings Bank, an individual and interior landmark located within the African Burial Ground and Commons and the Commons Historic District. This is a Beaux-Arts-style skyscraper and interior designed by Raymond F. Amaral, built in 1909 to 1912. The application is to amend a proposal to replace windows approved under docket number 176065. This was last presented in June 28th of 2016, and no action was taken.
Good morning, Commissioners. Edith Bellinghausen, Preservation staff. At the public hearing in October 2015, the applicants at that time presented a proposal to convert the building to residential use. This is the Immigrant Industrial Savings Bank building on Chambers Street, parts of which were required Commission review. Included in that proposal was replacing existing straight sash windows at curved bays located within the recessed light courts at both Chambers and Reed Streets with straight sash to maintain the existing condition. The project overall was approved by the Commission with the stipulation that the replacement windows at the curved bays match the historic curved sashes. In response to the Commissioner's request, the applicants then researched various options for curved sash, and at the public meeting of June 28th of last year, the applicants again proposed straight sashes, citing that manufacturers were unable at the time to guarantee the required performance standards. At that time, the Commission took no action and requested that a window mock-up and performance testing be performed. Based on the test results, the applicants have returned and again requesting straight sashes, and they'll discuss those results with you momentarily. I want to point out a new component to the proposal is the addition of a curved molding at the top of each window, which will be discussed. And this is a molding that will follow the curve of the window opening and matching the color and material of the window. And the purpose of this is to simulate the visual effect of a curved sash, particularly when viewed from below, and is an approach that has been supported by the Commissioners in the past when approving straight sashes in curved openings. So the applicants are here to further discuss the proposal and answer any questions.
Thank you, Edith. I move that we open the meeting to allow the applicant to present its modifications to the Commission.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ward Dennis with Higgins Quays Barth. Frank Seta from Frank Seta Engineering is here with me as well to talk about the testing. As Edith mentioned, this window replacement is part of a broader window replacement program for the entire building. The existing windows were installed in the early 1990s by a previous owner, the city. And at that time, they did replace curved sash in these bays with flat sash, and that's a condition that we want to maintain. We have, at the last public meeting, we went over a long list of options that we had looked at, and the basic issue is getting a window that will be warranted by the manufacturer. Based on the testing, we still have that same issue, that we cannot get a proper warranty on these windows. Just to remind you, I mean, obviously the building is right down the block. The curved bays that we are talking about are these bays here, which are set deeply into the light courts. They're not prominently on the main street facade. And the curved windows start about 50 to 60 feet up and continue up the height of the building. So for the most part, when you're looking at these, you're looking at the building dead on and from some distance. This is a view now on Reed Street. The previous view was on Chambers on Reed Street. Similar condition, we actually have equally spaced sash on this side as opposed to a larger center sash and side lights on the Chambers Street side. And in plan where we're talking about existing and proposed, one thing to remind you about is that in all of the windows, including these curved sash, through the replacement program by going jam to jam, we're greatly improving the sight lines on the windows and getting much closer to the historic condition, which you can see up here in this detail, which shows the curved sash on a Chambers Street bay with our proposed here. The bays themselves will, of course, continue to be curved. It's really just the sash between the mullions that will be segmented. And as Edith mentioned, we have adjusted the detail on the proposed window to bring a curved window head into the design, which will allow, that will be in the same color as the windows, the patinated copper color, which will emphasize when you're looking up at the bays, the curved bays. And we think that that will greatly help us. This is the same detail in section. I will ask Frank to talk about our previous work and the window testing that we did.
Okay, Ward or Frank, either one. Are you suggesting, though, that there are, I mean, there must be hundreds of buildings in New York that have curved windows in them. Are you suggesting that no window manufacturer exists who can?
Frank can go into that
okay.
in detail.
I think we should hear that.
The issue really is warranties, getting a warranted window.
Frank Seta, good morning. Frank Seta Associates. We are responsible for exterior wall roofing work within this project. As previously noted, this building has gone through certain studies from New York City Code to performance requirements. And we followed up with the testing. Going back to history of this job, due to the size and the dimension of the windows that we have in this project, we had a difficult time to persuade some of the suppliers that are available these days. And in reality, we found out that not too many of them, they were interested to get engaged with this project. Our basic requirements are AW60, the water penetration specified for 12, air is 6.24 PSF, which are basically the standard numbers for this size, for this height building. Several manufacturers, as we mentioned, were approached and they tried to get away with this project for their own reasons. And the only manufacturer that we were able to convince them, it took them close to 6 months, believe it or not, to come up with the window for test only. Now let's not forget about this, that when they do a mock-up, or they build a mock-up for us to go to the lab test, this is supposed to be their best product because it's fully controlled, it's not in the job site, it's in their shop, and they clearly can control every inch of it. And if you look at the typical windows, which are straight versus the curve, we know that there are not too many manufacturers these days that they can make a glass with no issue. If you look at the lower left left-hand picture, you could see the expression of the glass. On the right, you could see the curve, but again, it's a segmented glass. And getting an IGU within the frame that is being curved, has it been done in previous projects? Yes, but it's not that easy. The reason for that is you have a flat glass that is constantly moving, left and right, up and down, expands, and we have to consider that summertime it goes through a cycle of up to 120 degree. Wintertime it goes to -10. And this adjustment of the glass within the frame, that's the challenge. And you add that to a curve which is not perfectly lined up, any additional stress on the glass could create crack. And that's exactly what happened. When we arrived in the lab, in the actual manufacturer shop, we found out that 2 out of 2 glass were cracked already. And they had no idea why it happened, but as you see, the crack on both sashes were crystal clear that the glass is under pressure. So what happened, they started to go ahead and run a test with additional tape. I mean, as you know, when you have a hurricane, usually they put a tape to restrain the glass, and that's what they did. And by putting additional Band-Aid, they were able to run the test and go through the test. At the end, here's the trouble that we have approaching this concept. We rejected the test result, although it's called passed, for one reason and one reason only. Nobody can afford to have a set of windows coming to the job site. I'm not saying 100% that you saw the sample of the glass is broken, even 50%. Even 5 or 10 out of a couple of hundred windows is more than enough. Imagine that you spend $1 million for an apartment. 6 months later, you find that 2 out of 3 is broken. You have to deal with local law 11. DOB comes in and says, this is hazard, you got to do something about it. Now they close the street, sidewalk, and it's nothing but headache. That's the scenario that we will have as a result of this test and the sample. And the Graham manufacturer actually clearly wrote us that they cannot, based upon the size and the curvature that they have to follow, they cannot give us a long-term warranty. Standard, industry standard, as most of you know, you got to have 20-year warranty on the paint, 10-year on the glass, and gasket and caulking, 10 years. They could not give us more than a year. That's what they told me on the phone. And imagine that you start installing these windows, by the time the job finished, you lost that year. So that's the major issue, and we try to do our best.
Sorry to interrupt,
Sure.
but I just wanted to clarify something. So once you put the tape on,
Yes.
they passed infiltration, they passed the test.
Yes.
Okay. So the issue is not the operability. The issue is not the frame. The issue is how the glass is set into the frame that causes this crack in the first place, right? Okay. Is Graham or one of the, I mean, we see here in Landmarks, I think the staff probably sees it and we don't, plenty of people who do curved sashes, double hung windows for townhouses all over New York City.
Right.
Are the manufacturers that are making those windows in your list of people who said, no, we can't do it this time?
We had several manufacturer before I get involved with the job.
Right.
Apparently
And were they the ones who,
approached
they
the
do the curb, they do, but I know that, I know you gave us a list of people who declined, but I'm just asking, the people who normally say yes to curved windows, were they part of your group? Because the
I'll
staff, I'm
add-
sure, could
and
tell
I'll
you.
add a little to that question, too. Is it the double pane aspect of the new installation that's the problem? In other words, is it,
Apparently it is, so let's not forget, when the glass starts to expand, if it's straight, within the frame, it could easily expand it. But when it's curved and it starts to expand, it's not just at the end that it starts to expand. It's the whole low part of the glass. So what it does, it puts stress on the gasket at the curvature, and that could create extra pressure on the glass, which is not
but hundreds of buildings across the city obviously have single pane glass, maybe thicker glass too initially. And that has lasted a long time. So I'm just wondering, I think on behalf of the commission, we're all sort of wondering, what does this mean for all of these windows across the city, let alone the current application? Michael?
I was
Yeah.
just going to say that well, no, you continue. I would have a question for Edith to know if, in response to Michael's question, we recommended any of the manufacturers who we have approved in the past.
They have approached, the typical installation is in a wood frame, as noted earlier. I've not seen, and we've not seen this executed in metal at any point in time. The wood manufacturers typically install on townhouses, smaller buildings, different types of wood load, different types of criteria. I believe that in the discussions that were had, those manufacturers were not able to guarantee a performance that was required for the size of the building.
That's for an IGU, not for a single pane, single light.
Well, let me answer that.
I'm asking her, sir. Thank you.
I don't know if they were specific in the details as to whether they were confirmed, discussing a single glazing or double glazing. I don't know the answer.
As all we know, the question between the single and the IGU is the performance. Obviously, the advance that we have on the IGU, you would have a low E, which makes a huge difference as far as the performance. And imagine that you walk from one room to another, you have a flat wall with a flat window, and you walk 2 seconds later, you could literally feel it.
Right.
What the difference is.
Did any of the tests involve tempered glass? Tempered glass?
I don't believe they did the tempered, but let me add one more thing. In addition to air, water, and structure that we need to test, standard industry, I'm sure you know about it, that every window that is new design has to go through more vigorous test because of the protection of the new buyer. And the last test, what we call it is cycling, which the whole window system goes through the 120, and that test alone, it takes 1 week to do it. So we didn't go through that. Why we are doing that type of a test? Because during the cold temperature and warm temperature, the whole window starts to expand and contract. And not only the whole window, it's all the elements of the window. Start from gasket, caulking, glass, and so on and so forth. And we didn't go to that direction because it had already broken glass into the unit.
Do you think that the use of tempered glass would make any difference?
Well,
tempered glass has different properties than
That is
standard
correct.
glass.
The tempered glass, that added another addition requirement for production. I personally don't know if the manufacturer that they selected is capable of doing the tempered, because that's another process in addition to curving the glass. I know certain projects that internationally, they have a Chinese supplier and a Spanish company from Europe that they're extremely expensive when it comes to their product because of their specialty.
Which is to say it can be done, and it likely could be
It can be done,
warranted.
but again, we're talking about huge difference as far as the pricing and usually they work with their own team as far as the supplier and so on.
Okay. Other questions? What do we feel? So, is it a question of warranty? You can't get any warranty?
Yes, sir. The manufacturer said maximum they can do, it's only 1 year.
No, it's a matter of a warranty from these manufacturers that they've
List.
approached. Yes.
Yeah. When we presented at the last public meeting, we talked about the issues with warranty from a variety of manufacturers. And the question was raised by one of the commissioners, well, since part of the issue with the warranty is because there's no testing data available, why don't you do the test? So we went back, we went to Graham because they're providing the windows on the rest of the building, and they were willing to fabricate the mock-up to do the testing. In fabricating the mock-up, it's an issue of the glass breakage and the stress. So through the testing, Graham confirmed that they can't do an industry standard warranty on this product. They will only warrant it for 1 year in this instance.
Got it. Well, from my take on it, I think I can accept what we've heard and recommend approval because of where this is in the building, far back into the recesses of the L, and I don't think this is going to be a significant loss, and in fact, it doesn't exist that way now. But I do worry about other installations in where the curved window is a more prominent feature and much more visible, I think. But we're not confronted with that now, but I'm just suggesting that in this installation, I can support it. I'm wondering about others.
I don't feel that way. I think what we understood at the end here is that there could be a window that would be produced that would not crack. I don't exactly know what that criteria would be. A thicker glass, another kind of assembly, something else. But it seems like there are other manufacturers that would be able to do the work and potentially warranty the work, but would be more expensive. I mean, I think this whole issue of warranty is one that has to do with risk, and it's a question of who assumes the risk in the redevelopment of a significant project that will, whose profits will redound to someone. So I don't think we should, I don't think we should let go of adhering to the original design of this building, and the curved glass is essential.
Other comments? Yes.
I agree with Adi. It's an individual landmark. As Michael stated earlier today, there are many ways to skin a cat, and if you will recall, as I do, when this came before us the last time, I cited a Department of Energy. They have a number of window testing programs that they have gone through, and one of the principal things that the Department of Energy has stated is that the major amount of heat loss in a window is not through the glass, It's around the perimeter of the sash or the perimeter of the enframement of the window. And so I don't see an absolute need to use an IGU in this particular case. And in addition, I think the location of these windows within that inner U actually protects them more than they would be if they were on the street facade of the building. And so I think they need to go a little further with this.
So you're suggesting single pane,
I'm
perhaps, on
suggesting researching further if they insist upon an IGU or abandoning the IGU altogether.
Okay, other comments, Michael?
I'm on the fence on this one. I think that I think there's a couple of interesting things here. I mean, on the one hand, you can't. I don't know. I think it's worth noting that the windows passed the parts of the test that I would be most concerned that they wouldn't, which is the air infiltration, the water infiltration. So the operability of the units, the frame of the units seem to work. I think what would make me feel better about it is if the applicant had said, well, the companies that make curved, I mean, I understand if Graham doesn't make curved windows, and if really the only available vendor for this project is Graham functionally because Graham is making the windows for the rest of the project, as the applicant said, I think that, you know, they're not going to take on that risk. It's not, you know, I wouldn't if I was Graham. It's not, you know, business logic to do so. It's a big installation. However, I know that the staff approves curved glass for townhouses all the time, and as the applicant said, this is not a standard that is an extraordinarily challenging one. This is not a hurricane situation. It's not on a coast. There are, you know, it's a reasonable thing to assume that a company like Marvin or Pella that make standard wood, even metal-clad wood windows, and I believe that they make curved windows for townhouses all the time, might, you know, I've seen advertisements for Pella where they advertise multi-story installations. Same thing for Marvin. So I'm sure they've had to meet codes. And I think I would feel better if they'd have said, you know, we approached Marvin or companies like that, and they too passed on it. I think that the consideration of tempered glass, I mean, the pictures showed the breaks in the corner, in the edges, where it seems to relate to the way that the units expanded or were installed. So it's consistent with what the applicant said about the difficulty of the IGUs. I think that Michael's suggestion of single pane is possible. I think the idea of looking at tempered glass is possible. I'm reluctant to torture the applicant more, but I think it is an important installation and it's a critical detail to the building.
Well, back to your on the fence. Which side of the fence are you on? I'm counting numbers now.
Being on the fence means being on neither side, I guess. I would go along with everyone if everyone else felt that it was approvable, but I'm reluctant to do so, I guess.
Putting you down on the perhaps no side. Kim?
I would like curved glass too, but I'm willing to believe that's hard to get the curved glass at this point. So I'm willing to go with segmented.
Okay. Diana?
I guess, you know, I would like to see the curved glass. And, you know, I do feel the one thing that goes in their favor, in my opinion, is the visibility issue. But I do feel that, you know, it's an individual landmark. If there are other possibilities to be explored that are a few phone calls or something, you know, like, yeah, would Marvin do it? What about the single pane? It sounds like there still are a couple of unanswered questions. And, you know, they could come back rapidly after such an assessment, hopefully. So I'm kind of on the side of let's make sure that we've done due diligence and really explored the options.
Well, let me just complete the round up?
I'm with Michael and Audie.
Yeah, okay.
By the way, just a footnote, I'm doing a job right now on the waterfront where we have hurricane restrictions, and we're putting in curved insulated glass units that meet hurricane standards.
Wood, I
No,
presume.
metal.
Oh, metal. Maybe you can help out our applicant.
And they're huge, by the way. They're way bigger than these.
Well, we don't have votes to approve what has been suggested today. So what does that mean? They come back to?
Well, I think maybe there's a few avenues of exploration that have been identified. So maybe the next step is for you all to sort of check those boxes, to speak to some of the curved glass, specific curved glass manufacturers, maybe find out who's manufacturing the windows that you're referring to, Michael.
Consider single pane.
Then consider
Series
single
of
panes. If
options.
there's the same issues with single panes in terms of warranty. And I guess at the end of the day, also reach out and find out what the facts and the costs are of a tempered glass coming out of Europe would be.
That's a take no action.
All right, so
So we're gonna take no action.
action today. Okay, so that's where we are. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, Commissioners, that's it for today. Thank you very much. There is lunch for everyone.